You there? Yes. You with the secret ache lodged behind your ribcage, the man who lies awake at 2 a.m., wondering why the voice in his head sounds less like his own and more like someone else's demands. Listen closely. Seneca would grab you by the shoulders and whisper through gritted teeth, "No man is free who is a slave to his body." And what is a relationship built on trembling need, but a second body grafted onto yours, siphoning every pulse of thought until the only freedom left is the illusion you smile with at gatherings? Tonight, tear the graft off and bleed if you must, because the bleeding is proof of life, and the torrent of solitude that follows is the first clear river you have tasted in years. Seneca lived amid Rome's opulence, yet he cultivated a radical poverty of attachment, insisting that a man counts riches not by what he owns, but by what he can do without. Imagine the thunder of that truth in a world where every swipe, every ping, every coy glance begs you to mortgage your soul for a momentary hit of approval. But Seneca's voice cuts through the glittering fog. He is most powerful who has himself in his own power. Do you? Or do you hand power over every time you tailor your sentence so she won't twist your words, every time you bend your hopes to fit the fragile architecture of her expectations, every time you call it compromise when it is really the slow amputation of purpose? Picture the single man walking the crowded forum. Your modern marketplace is the algorithmic feed, and see how he carries silence like a hidden blade. He owes no evening explanations, no perfume delusions, no careful arithmetic of affection. In his solitude, he hears the crisp crackle of his own thoughts, unpolluted, savage, volcanic. Seneca warned that the mind grows restless when barreled in noise, and relationships, though sweet in promise, are often factories of noise. Quarrels over nothing, anxieties over everything, the dull throb of obligation dressed up as romance. But a mind that reclines in solitude sharpens like an obsidian edge. It studies, it writes, it forges plans that scorch the horizon. That is why Seneca urged Lucilius, retire into yourself as much as you can. Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. Notice he never said a lover would suffice. He placed friendship and personal mastery above any feverish entanglement. The benefit? Time, the most ruthless creditor, suddenly pays you interest instead of collecting your debt. Take the nights you once surrendered to appeasement rituals, the endless reassurance, the delicate negotiations about whose dream matters more, and trade them for nights of furious study, sweat-dripping workouts, or the tranquil ecstasy of staring at a page until revelation unclenches its fist. Seneca thundered, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Hear him. The single man does not apologize for hoarding his hours like gold. He stacks them, melts them, reforges them into spear points aimed at the clouds. "But I need love," you protest, the limbic system howling for validation. Seneca smirks. He has seen emperors worshipped, then assassinated by that same craving, and replies, "If you wish to be loved, love prudently." Prudence, my friend, is the art of choosing battlefields you can command. Singleness is not an exile, it is the high ground. You survey life from there, and every decision is yours alone, sculpted by rational fire instead of emotional mud. Remember how it felt before compromise colonized your calendar, when a Saturday could unspool like a silk road across your imagination? The single man still owns that empire. He wakes without the siren of expectation curling around his throat. He roams bookstores until the pages smell of eternity, trains until the iron bends to his will, listens to thunderstorms as though they were ancestral drums. Seneca wrote that the wise man is content with himself, that virtue suffices for happiness. Happiness, then, is not a woman's gaze, but the unflinching intimacy you cultivate with your own conscience. And what is virtue but self-rule, the kingdom no seduction can annex? When the world seduces you with coupling as proof of worth, Seneca's ghost hurls a chalice across marble floors and roars, "Worth is self-sovereign." The echoes still ring across centuries. Let them ring in your chest tonight. Let their vibration crack the plaster of dependence, so the light of terrifying freedom floods in. You may stagger at first, blinded by possibilities, but stand tall. Rome's Stoic giant stands beside you, nodding in grim approval. For the man who walks alone walks unshackled, and that, my brother, is the untold victory they never wanted you to claim. You say you want peace, yet you cradle chaos every night in the form of need. You say you want freedom, but you tie your worth to text replies, side eyes, and emotional weather you can't predict. Seneca would weep, not for your pain, but for your blindness. To be everywhere is to be nowhere, he wrote, and yet here you are, a man scattered across messages, moments, and meaningless apologies. You are nowhere because you no longer live within yourself. You are a performance, a placeholder, a man rehearsing his life for someone else's approval. But the single man, the truly single man, is not fragmented. He is whole because he belongs to no one but his own reason. There is a reason why Seneca praised solitude as the breeding ground of greatness. He was not against love. He was against the kind of love that demands you shrink to fit inside someone else's script. When a man is single, he can expand, inflate, become monstrous in the best sense, a giant of thought, of presence, of quiet impact. But when he is entangled with the wrong woman, his soul becomes a rented apartment. He cannot decorate it with dangerous ideas or unpopular convictions. He cannot dance alone to the beat of his own fire. Instead, he watches himself in third person, shrinking, softening, censoring. And then he calls it maturity. Seneca would have spat that lie into the Tiber. The man who fears suffering is already suffering from what he fears. Apply that. You stay in situations not because they nourish you, but because you're terrified of the ache of being alone. And yet that ache, sharp, clean, honest, is the crucible where men are made. Seneca knew that pain is the great clarifier. When you are single, you feel the sting of your own company, yes, but you also discover that it is your own company where greatness germinates. You stop negotiating who you are. You stop pretending not to want more. You stop apologizing for your hunger. The world keeps telling men to settle down. Seneca tells you, settle up. Rise. Rise to yourself. In the quiet of the single life, you confront everything you tried to drown in noise, your doubts, your regrets, your secret ambitions. That confrontation is a storm, and it is the only storm worth enduring. You want to be a man who changes the course of his bloodline. Then first, change the course of your own mind. And for that, solitude is not optional. It is required. Withdraw into yourself as far as you can, Seneca advised, for the soul is a vast domain. What he meant was simple. The average man only explores women. The wise man explores his own soul. And when he returns from that voyage, if he chooses to love, he does so not from emptiness, but from overflow. Not from fear, but from fullness. But until then, the man who walks alone walks with destiny. He builds, he studies, he listens to time instead of noise. The world mocks him because it fears him, because he cannot be manipulated with sex or softness or shame. He is dangerous not because he hurts women, but because he no longer needs them to feel alive. He is the man who opens his eyes in the dark and smiles, not because someone is next to him, but because no one is. That smile is the beginning of freedom. That freedom is what terrifies the world, because a free man cannot be bought, cannot be broken, and worst of all, he cannot be controlled. That, Seneca would say, is the ultimate benefit of being single, not the absence of a partner, but the presence of your power. Look around you. Men are everywhere, but presence is rare. What you see are shadows of men, hollow-eyed, tightly coiled, domesticated by love they don't understand and obligations they never consciously accepted. They wear the ring, they play the role, they smile in photographs, but inside there's a scream they've long since silenced. Seneca saw this long before you did. In his world too, men were praised for being devoted, admired for being tamed, but he knew what that devotion often cost: themselves. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, he wrote, and how many men today suffer because they imagine they'll be nothing without a woman? Let's be brutal. Most men don't fall in love, they fall into servitude. She becomes the new god, and every decision, career, schedule, even inner thoughts, is filtered through her imagined response. The moment you need her approval to breathe, you've ceased to be a man in the Stoic sense. Seneca believed that the only true wealth is self-command, that a man who needs nothing possesses everything. A single man, if he is philosophically awake, is not poor in love, but rich in liberty. He may dine alone, but he tastes every bite with the clarity of a sovereign. He may sleep alone, but his dreams are untainted by fear of betrayal, rejection, or emotional blackmail. He doesn't just enjoy peace, he embodies it. And let's not mistake solitude for loneliness. Seneca made a sharp distinction. Associate with people who are likely to improve you, he urged. Welcome those whom you are capable of improving. He never said, find someone to fill your silence. The silence is the test. The single man, when awakened, turns that silence into a forge. There he refines his discipline, hones his purpose, and sharpens his ability to live well on his own terms. That's not just a phase, that's power. The man who has himself, who can live content without external praise, validation, or emotional codependence, is the man society fears. Because he cannot be bought, he cannot be softened, he cannot be broken by absence, because he is full in his own presence. Now ask yourself, what did you sacrifice in your last relationship? Your time, your ambition, your instincts, your fire? And what did you gain? Conditional affection? Sexual access in exchange for submission? The illusion of being chosen? Seneca would raise an eyebrow at such a trade. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. But most men are not being polished in relationships. They are being worn down. Trial is one thing, torture is another. And Seneca, who was tested by emperors, exile, and public scorn, never once recommended the latter in pursuit of love. To be single is to have the full canvas of your day, unspoiled by emotional graffiti. To be single is to read without interruption, train without guilt, build without compromise. It is not a punishment. It is preparation. It is preservation. It is the raw space where the man you were meant to be finally has room to emerge. And if one day you choose to love, it will not be because you need to be completed. It will be because you are already complete. Until then, walk alone with dignity. Seneca would call that the highest form of company, your own well-governed soul. You were not born to negotiate your masculinity. You were not designed to be trimmed down to fit a relationship where love is measured by compliance and masculinity is mistaken for aggression. And yet, how many men live this way, apologizing for their ambition, diluting their fire, asking permission to breathe deeply? Seneca saw this sickness in the hearts of men long before the world gave it the polite name of commitment. He would have called it what it is, self-abandonment disguised as love. A man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. And you, shackled in emotional bureaucracy, suffer daily, not from solitude, but from your refusal to embrace it. The single man, when awakened, is not lonely. He is luminous. He wakes to his own rhythm, not the emotional weather vane of someone else's mood. He thinks freely, speaks dangerously, and acts with precision. There is no diluted masculinity in him, only concentrated intent. And while the world praises domesticated men, it secretly craves the return of those who cannot be tamed. That's why they call him names. Cold, distant, unavailable. No, he's just whole. Seneca didn't tell men to become emotionally detached. He told them to be ruled by reason, not lust, not desperation, not fear of being alone. That's not detachment. That's discipline. That's sovereignty. Consider how much of your anxiety in relationships came from performance, not love. Performance. You had to say the right thing, feel the right emotion at the right moment, soften when you wanted to speak hard truths. You lost your truth and called it harmony. You lost your mission and called it compromise. Seneca would ask, why do you not act instead of complaining? That's not a quote. It's a provocation. He meant that you do not need a better relationship.
You must learn to hold a stronger allegiance to yourself. When a man lives in harmony with his own reason, his actions are guided by his will, not by the fluctuating expectations of others. A man who gains mastery over his mind becomes unshakable, untouchable. If you desire to build something lasting, something eternal, if you want to conquer the demons that shadow your path, you must face them without noise, without distraction, without leaning on anyone to carry what only you can confront. Legacy is not crafted in comfort. It is forged in silence, in discipline, in sacrifice. A life spent constantly adjusting to the shifting demands of emotional or romantic dependency leaves. That is why Seneca urged men to choose a path and stay devoted to it. Most men fail to remain committed to anything because they are tangled, emotionally, sexually, psychologically. They are owned by their attachments, though no contract shows it. Their freedom dissolves long. But the man who walks alone, intentionally, not accidentally, possesses a rare power. He becomes the one who chooses his path without apology, without...
There is something wrong with being forgettable, with being tame, with being replaceable. The man who embraces solitude becomes unforgettable because he becomes fully himself. His thoughts deepen, his craft sharpens, his presence thickens. He enters a room and carries silence like a war drum. He doesn't chase affection because he doesn't crave anesthesia. He craves clarity, and clarity lives in solitude. It's hard, yes. It's raw, but it's real. It's honest. It's the only space where transformation isn't diluted by distraction. That's why Seneca praised the life of the philosopher, not as an escape from pain, but as a confrontation with truth. And in that confrontation, in that fire, the single man is reborn, not as a wounded lover, but as a warrior who finally remembers who he is. You've been lied to. From your earliest years, they taught you that being alone is a failure, that solitude is a sign something's wrong with you, that the man who stands by himself must be broken, undesirable, or bitter. But Seneca would have laughed at such illusions. The first step toward wisdom, he wrote, is the desire for solitude. Not because people are evil, but because noise is the enemy of self-knowledge, and modern relationships, for all their poetry, are often noise disguised as intimacy. 1,000 texts a day, constant checking in, the emotional boomerang of validation, guilt, expectation. Where in all that, do you even have space to breathe? The single man has something most men in relationships can't name: stillness. It's in the way he walks, the way he chooses, the way he can be silent for days and never once feel empty. Stillness is not absence. It is presence distilled to its purest form. Seneca knew this, and he warned against the erosion of this inner space. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. But how can a man learn if his days are consumed with managing the moods of someone who doesn't even know their own? How can he evolve if his growth threatens the fragile balance of a relationship where comfort is king and confrontation is sin? You see, singleness is not an escape from women. It's a return to yourself. It's the moment when you stop being a satellite orbiting someone else's gravity and become a star burning on your own fuel. The reason it's terrifying is because it reveals just how much you've been hiding behind roles. The boyfriend, the nice guy, the dependable one. Take all that away, and what's left? If it's emptiness, good. Now you know where to begin. Seneca believed that discomfort was the beginning of transformation. We become wise not by remembering the past, but by preparing for the future. The single man prepares. He doesn't wait. He doesn't wish. He sharpens. And what does he sharpen? Not just his skills, his standards, his discernment, his ability to walk away from what doesn't elevate him. Because when you are single and strong, you no longer settle for a warm body. You look for a mind, a soul, a partner in purpose, or you choose no one at all. Because you know the truth. It's better to walk alone in clarity than march beside someone in confusion. Seneca would call that virtue. And to the Stoics, virtue was the only true good. So look around. The world celebrates the man who gives everything for love, who sacrifices his peace for the promise of connection. But Seneca would turn your gaze inward and ask, what is it you're really giving up? Your ambition? Your focus? Your soul's hunger? For what? A relationship where you must constantly shrink, censor, and question yourself to keep the illusion alive? That's not love. That's bondage dressed in perfume. And you, man of silence, man of fire, man of forgotten dreams, you were not born to be caged by convention. You were born to create, to conquer, to become. Let them mock you for being single. Let them pity you in whispers. You'll smile because you know what they don't, that a man who walks alone walks with the gods, that in solitude, Seneca found freedom, and through freedom, he found peace. And peace, my brother, is the only true luxury left in a world addicted to noise. What do they really fear when they see a man alone? Not his loneliness. No, they fear his indifference. They fear that he is no longer playing the game, that he has stepped off the treadmill of begging for attention, pleasing, performing, proving. A single man who has accepted himself is not just rare, he is dangerous. Because you cannot manipulate a man who no longer needs you. You cannot bend a man who is already whole. Seneca didn't just advise solitude, he revered it. To him, it was the very soil in which integrity grew. He who is brave is free, he said, and there is no greater act of bravery in this age than to be a man alone, unashamed, and complete. Now ask yourself this: where does your time go when you're not single? Not just your clock, but your energy, your attention, your fire. Every hour explaining yourself, decoding messages, rebuilding trust from things you didn't even do. That's time you could have spent crafting your body, building your legacy, understanding your own soul. Life is long, if you know how to use it, Seneca wrote. Yet most men waste the best years of their life negotiating away their instincts just to be accepted. They surrender mornings to conflict. They give their nights to obligation. Their minds are no longer free range. They are leased, rented, taxed by the minute. That's not love. That's servitude with a prettier name. Seneca knew that the highest wealth is not money but time well governed. The single man is not wealthy because he's free from bills. He's wealthy because he owns his time. He spends it deliberately, not reactively. He chooses how to rise and how to rest, how to learn and how to build. He doesn't explain his goals. He executes them. He doesn't plead for peace. He is peace. That's what solitude gives you. Not just silence, but sovereignty. Not just space, but structure. Not just absence, but access to your deeper self, your truer aims, your undeveloped power. They told you that having someone is better than being alone. But the truth is, being half of a broken thing is worse than being whole in your solitude. They told you that relationships are growth, but growth doesn't happen under constant compromise. It happens in the furnace of solitude, where no one is watching and no one is clapping. That's where a man meets his own darkness. That's where he shapes it into discipline, strategy, wisdom. That's where he becomes not just a better man, but a dangerous one. Because when you are content alone, you are ungovernable. Seneca knew the world would tempt you, with pleasures, with flattery, with romantic escape hatches. But he taught that true pleasure comes from mastering pain, not avoiding it. That means confronting your fears of loneliness head-on, instead of masking them with bodies and attachments. That means looking in the mirror, not for validation, but for direction. And if you've been alone long enough, you know this: solitude doesn't break men, it reveals them. It shows you exactly what you're made of. No applause, no soft distractions, just you and your unfiltered truth. And once you've tasted that kind of self-intimacy, the idea of bending again, of shrinking again, is revolting. So let the world misunderstand you. Let them call you cold, too serious, too independent. You'll smile, not out of pride, but because you know the real meaning of what Seneca called tranquillitas animi, the tranquility of soul. You don't need chaos to feel alive anymore. You don't need someone else to complete your story, because now, for the first time, you are writing it, alone and with fire. You were not meant to rot in the waiting room of someone else's indecision. Yet that is where most men sit, silent, loyal, emotionally rationing themselves in relationships that feed them just enough affection to keep them hungry, but never enough to set them free. Seneca would have been horrified by this spiritual starvation. He warned us plainly: he who is constantly in search of approval has made himself a slave. And what is modern romance for many men, if not a lifelong audition? You audition for affection. You audition for loyalty. You audition for permission to simply exist as you are. But the single man has burned the script. He no longer plays roles. He no longer lives by the fear of abandonment, because he has made peace with being alone. In fact, he has discovered what few dare to admit. Being alone is not a curse. It is a crucible. And the fire that it brings is holy. In that fire, the dead weight burns off. People-pleasing, insecurity, the need to explain yourself to anyone who can't match your depth. You come out of that fire not as a version of someone's ideal, but as a man forged in the truth of his own standard. Seneca didn't need a partner to feel whole because he had purpose, and purpose is louder than love songs. It's colder than comfort. It doesn't stroke your ego. It demands your soul. The single man has no one to distract him from the call of that purpose. His schedule is his weapon. His focus is his shield. While others drown in the shallow pools of their emotional compromises, he swims in deep waters, hard studies, cold mornings, late nights of deliberate silence. And from those depths rises a man who knows what most never learn. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of clarity. And clarity is something only solitude can give. You see, when you are single and awake, you begin to see the cost of emotional dependence everywhere, in how men speak softly even when they want to roar, in how they seek permission to think out loud, in how they trade truth for peace in their own homes. You will see men who are praised for being committed, but when you look in their eyes, you'll see quiet extinction. Because what they've committed to is not love, it's comfort, not growth, but stagnation. Seneca would have mourned that. It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare, he wrote, but because we do not dare that they are difficult. Most men do not dare to be alone, and so their lives become difficult in all the worst ways. But when you dare, when you choose singleness not as a wound but as a weapon, you begin to realize that your life is not a waiting room. It is a fortress. It is a forge. It is a map drawn in fire, not ink. Your days are no longer dictated by someone else's storms. Your mornings are not hostage to apologies. Your nights are not haunted by the fear of being misunderstood. You are finally free. And that freedom, that is the most dangerous possession a man can have. Because once you taste it, you will never again trade it for a soft smile or a temporary warmth that comes at the cost of your soul. Seneca understood that love is not evil, but he also understood that love without virtue, without clarity, without discipline, without self-respect, is not love at all. It is addiction dressed in roses. And the cure for that addiction is not another relationship. It is silence. It is solitude. It is the radical act of saying, I am enough. Not in a shallow self-help slogan way, but in the profound way of a man who has walked through his own abyss and come out carrying light. That is what being single gives you. Not just time, but the courage to meet yourself. And in meeting yourself, you become the man no one can tame. Not because you are cruel, but because you are whole. And now you stand at the edge, not of loneliness, but of liberation. You've heard the world's sermons about love, about partnership, about how a man without a woman is a tree without roots. But Seneca reminds you, you act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. You wait forever to chase your purpose, but rush headfirst into attachments that drain it. You put off your mission for tomorrow and tie your identity to someone who might not be there by next week. And every time it crumbles, you call it heartbreak, when what it really is reality reclaiming its place. The truth, as Seneca saw it, is brutally simple. The man who fears being alone has already surrendered his power. The man who cannot sit with himself cannot be trusted with another. The single man, however, has faced the silence, chewed through the boredom, swallowed the ache, and emerged with something rare in this world: direction. He doesn't live for comfort. He lives for consequence. He knows that every hour is either an investment in his future or a debt to his regrets. And so he spends his time like a king, not a beggar. He doesn't chase love. He doesn't perform for validation. He simply becomes ruthlessly, relentlessly, and unapologetically the man he was meant to be. So when the world asks, why are you still single? You won't flinch. You'll smile, not with smugness, but with the quiet certainty of a man who owns himself. You'll look them in the eye and say, because I am building something no relationship has ever offered me: peace, purpose, and personal truth. And if love finds you on that path, fine. If not, even better. Because you are not waiting. You are not hoping. You are not lost. You are forging, creating, becoming. And that is something no one can give you, and no one can take away. If this message hit home, if it woke up a fire inside you, even just for a second, then it's your duty to not let it die here. Like this video. Share it with the men who've forgotten who they are. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these hard truths. And most importantly, support the mission through the link in the description. Because men are starving for real wisdom, and we're building a place where they'll find it. Let them mock us for walking alone. One day, they'll see that the road they feared was the one that led to everything they truly needed. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Stay sharp. Stay sovereign. Stay single. Until you no longer need to be. Because that's when you'll finally be free.